Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. About a week ago, I did a video called My First Rolling Stones Albums. And it's a video series I'm doing suggested by Tom, one of our great subscribers, who, instead of just talking about albums, he wants to know how I got into a band and what were the first albums I got by them, and maybe when was the first time I saw them live. So we started off with the Stones, and today is going to be episode 2, and this one is going to be my first the Who albums. How did I get into the Who? And it pretty much similar beginning as the Rolling Stones. You probably know I have a sister who's 4 years older than me. Let's go back to 1971. I was 8 years old. My sister is 4 years older. So 8 and 4, so she's like 12. And maybe it was 71, 72. I'm not exactly sure when she got them. But she had 2 albums by The Who. She had Tommy, and she had Who's Next. Probably most of those considered the 2 greatest albums by The Who. Not my favorites even to this day, but most people probably say they're 2 best albums. And no doubt, I fell in love with those albums over time. Again, I don't know the exact years because I didn't have them. She had them, but she would always let me play her albums, and I would always let her play my albums, so we kind of shared in a way. And eventually I would dupe her albums on 8-track. So I had Who's Next and I had Tommy. Especially Tommy. I played Tommy so much back in those days, and I loved Tommy, knew every note. If you had the vinyl album, it came with the libretto, with all the words and the cool graphics. Tommy just sucked me in and just loved it. In fact, in 75, when the movie came out, my mother took me to see the movie, which was way cool. Who's Next also played it to death, loved it. Like Tommy probably a little bit more. But Who's Next, even then, what would you hear on the radio? You'd hear Pinball Wizard, and you'd hear Baba O'Reilly, and you'd hear Won't Get Fooled Again. And even from a young age, it drove me crazy when people would say, Teenage Wasteland, man, Teenage Wasteland. I'm like, it's goddamn Baba O'Reilly. It ain't Teenage Wasteland. But anyway, that was Who's Next. So I had it on 8-track and Tommy. It wasn't until 1976, when I was 13, that I bought my first official Who album. And it was unplanned because I was in a record store and I saw the coolest Who album I ever saw. And I kept it because you probably know my channel. I don't usually keep too much vinyl once I get them on CD. This was the first Who album I ever bought with my own money. 1976, another import from Gem. And look at that cover. This is a compilation album called The Story of The Who. I don't know if this ever came out on CD. Let me know. And this is a double album. And that is the set list, let's call it. Side 1 and Side 2. Side 3 was just Tommy stuff. And Side 4 with, Summertime Blues from Live at Leeds and Baba O'Reilly. And Slipkid, 1 track from Who by Numbers. Another thing about this album was the packaging. When you opened it up, look at the... I'm going to stand up. Look at the graphics, guys. Back in these days, this was a big-ass deal. Unfortunately, this album has lost its stickiness. It actually is like this. That's what it looks like. And it had big-ass pages. Look at... I'm bringing back some memories for me. Look at the graphics. It's got the biographies, great photographs, the story of The Who. This is all in the gatefold of the story of The Who. It's got the family tree. Can you see? Yeah, there we go. And the final page. Look at that shot. And when I got this album, it took me on a whole nother level of The Who. 1976, I'm 13 years old, I get this double import, and I am now Who crazy in 1976. I literally went nuts at the age of 13. So this was my first Who album. Let's stick it like that. And hope it doesn't fall. David, so I know you're rooting for these things to fall, but I don't want them to fall. Stay there. Don't fall even there. All right, that's the story of Who, my first Who album. In 1976, I went Who crazy. What was the next Who album I got? It wasn't this one. I'm going to show it to you for a reason. Back at that point, there was two versions of these twofers, these cheap twofers. This one was Magic Bust the Who and the Who Sings by Numbers, and it would have a gatefold. And then on the back, one album was the My Generation, and the other album's Magic Bust in this case. But this was not the album I want to talk about. The one that I got in 1976 was a twofer of A Quick One and the Who Sell Out, which I no longer have because I just didn't need it anymore. I got millions of copies on different CDs. So the next Who album I got was A Quick One and the Who Sell Out on a twofer, which I don't have. Let's put these out. So here is the Who's Next. Now, of course, I have tons of different versions. Here's another version of Who's Next. And let's stick that one over there. And then I got tons of different versions of Tommy. We can stick that over there. Here's another version of Tommy. And then on the top, I'll show you later, I got all the mega deluxe versions I have as well. So you can probably see this, right? Can we see this? Let's focus a little bit like that. So there is Who's Next and Tommy. The next one I got was the twofer of A Quick One, and that was later supplanted by this CD, remastered with a bunch of bonus tracks. A Quick One was a really fun listen on that double vinyl. I really liked it. I would not say it was the greatest Who album, but I really dug it, and I love So Sad About Us and the title track, and it's just it's a different fun record. The other half of the twofer, though, was Sell Out, which is one of my, still to this day, and I did a Who ranking, you could find it. I love the Who Sell Out. I just think it's the coolest album, and I fell in love with Sell Out on that double vinyl. And of course now I have it on tons of different versions on CD. I have a deluxe edition and the mega I'll show you at the end. But, especially with the jingles in between, and Armonita, City in the Sky, and Heinz Be Marianne to Shake Your Hands, Odorono, Tattoo. Our Love Was, I Could See for Miles, I Can't Reach You. This is a damn near perfect album for me. And to this day, it's still one of my go-to Who albums. And here's a deluxe edition of it. We'll just stick that over there, shall we? So starts off with the story of the Who in '76. The same year, I pick up the twofer of A Quick One and Sell Out, and I end '76 with one more Who album, which becomes very quickly my favorite Who album to this day. And Who Sell Out didn't have a single track on it from Quadrophenia. Back at 1976, it was kind of a forgotten Who album. It didn't really get much play. You didn't even hear Love Rain on Me on the radio at that time. Really, the 73 tour, which when I was 10 years old, I didn't see it, was kind of, I don't want to say a bust, but it didn't go over that well. And just Quadrophenia was not getting play at that time. So when I got Quadrophenia at the end of '76, it became my album because it was just so deep. I remember telling friends about it, and I had it on vinyl with the big libretto. And then eventually I got this version. This is a 2 CD version with bonus tracks. Looks like that. And then I got an original 2 CD version without bonus tracks. And then I got that mega huge one up there, which I'll show you, which is the mega version with the director's cut, which has got so much stuff in it. So to this day, Quadrophenia is my favorite Who album. I feel very personal. I love the story of the difficulties of being a teenager and growing up and trying to fit in, and life's challenges with your parents and all of that. It just strikes me to the core. Quadrophenia. So at the end of '76, I got Story of the Who, A Quick One, Sell Out on a twofer, and Quadrophenia. Those are my first Who albums that I bought with my own money. '77, next in line was this guy, and I had it on vinyl, and I kept it because this is that really cool version on vinyl. We're talking about Live at Leeds. And this is that version with all of the, the doodads that it came with, which is kind of cool. And I love Live at Leeds. One of the all-time great live albums of all time, no doubt about it. And the fact that Live at Leeds has been reissued so many times. I got the original vinyl when I got it, in 77, and then the original CD version. Then they put out this version with more tracks, which I loved. I thought that was great. And then if that wasn't enough, they put out this mega deluxe version, which has like the whole concert, including the whole Tommy. Now, at this point in my life, there's so many live versions of Tommy, I don't ever need to hear it ever again. But this is one hell of a performance. Live at Leeds, an amazing live album, obviously. And that was the next Who album I got in 77, which then leads us to 1978, where I could become current with the band, because in 1978, they released Who Are You? And I got this vinyl version on red vinyl. Ooh, back in the day. And then I got it on CD. The CD version is different. I kept the vinyl not just because it's red. There's actually different versions of the songs. I actually caught it, and I just remember never hearing any critics talking about it. But that was definitely the beginning of the end of The Who, as they were with Keith Moon back in 78, because Keith Moon's drumming on Who Are You is non-existent except for the title track. You could just hear it. He could not play a lot of this music, and it's kind of a mixed bag, this album, but my favorite songs on this album, by the way, are the Entwistle songs. Trick of the Light is still one of my favorite Who tracks, and 905 is a really cool track, but this was the beginning of the end of The Who, and Keith sitting in the chair that says not to be taken away. It has now come out, and Townsend readily says it, that, to be blunt, that he says it, if Keith Moon didn't die, he would not have been in the band anymore. He just couldn't play anymore, which is kind of sad. And you hear it all over Who Are You? And then 79, big year for The Who. Keith Moon passes away. They bring in Kenny Jones, and they released the amazing documentary, The Kids Are All Right, which I had on vinyl, and this is the compilation. And it's a great compilation because it's a great mixture of live stuff and unreleased stuff. And The Kids Are All Right is one of my all-time favorite rock and roll movies. So, fantastic documentary. And that was also the first time I was able to see The Who in 1979. And this is my concert book. And it was my first concert I showed you was the Rolling Stones in 75. And in my archives, I have the newspaper clippings, the newspaper ads, the ticket stubs, the reviews from the newspaper. And somewhere in here, if we go to 79, now back in those days, guys, ticket prices were like cheap, $8, maybe less. I used to go to a lot of concerts. It's a shame today you can't afford to go to concerts, because back then I used to go to concerts all the time. And there it is. So 1979, well, that's the Kinks on one side, and who's that? Patti Smith at the Calderone. But right up there, Warmed Up Who, Hot for the Garden, there's the WPLJ sticker. And that was September 18th, 1979. If I go to this side, there it is. There is the review, The Who's Changing Vision. And there's the ticket stub from Madison Square Garden. That was night 5. The final performance tickets were $11 to see The Who at Madison Square Garden. I had section 434, but I think me and my friend Mike, apparently, according to my notes, says we snuck down to section 126. And there was the set list, which I wrote on a piece of paper when I got home. So there's The Who, closing night at Madison Square Garden, 1979. That was the last time, the first time I saw The Who. And they were red hot. This was an article review even in Newsweek or Time. This was Time magazine. So The Who were red hot. Right after that, I saw Fleetwood Mac. So saw a lot of concerts back in those days. So that was the first time I saw The Who. And they had Kenny Jones. And Kenny Jones, they were on fire at that point. And then 2 years later, they would release Face Dances. But at that point, they were just playing just the show, and they were playing some Quadrophenia stuff. Just great show. So there you have it, my history of The Who. Again, to recap, my sister had Who's Next Tommy, which I dubbed on 8-track. Then I bought Story of The Who. And then I got the twofer of Sellout and a quick one. And then I got Quadrophenia. My mother bought me that, I think, for the holidays at the end of the year. And that album became my Who album. And then the following year, 77, I got Live at Leeds on vinyl. and then, you know, subsequent versions. In 78, they did Who Are You? Keith Moon passes away. 79, they put out The Kids Are Alright, and I get to see them at Madison Square Garden. And to this day, I have tons. I have every Who album, multiple versions, as you probably know. And if we scoot up, and you can see right above there, by the way, there's the new David Gilmour album I bought today. Fantastic. I'll get into that later on. But you can kind of see up there, My Generation, The Who Sell Out, Tommy the Who, Who's Next, Lifehouse, and Quadrophenia. The mega uber boxes from each of these albums. And then I also have Joined Together and some other Who stuff as well. I always say The Who are my second or third favorite band, and then I say The Kinks are my second or third favorite band. I'll talk about the Kinks in my next video of this series. I switch off they're opposites. You know, the Kinks have a lot more songs that are amongst my favorites because they got a billion albums, but their albums are fairly spotty, a lot of them, where the Who have a tight discography, and those albums are pretty much rock solid, except for some of the latter day ones. So there you go. I got my Townsend shirt on. Let me know what you think. Back in the day, 1976, when I started buying them, I was 13 years old. And yep, I was still watching my cartoons of Bugs Bunny. And there's a Bugs Bunny pin on my hat. So that was the thinking with this hat. Anyway, thanks so much as always. If you're new to my channel, hit subscribe. Check out my playlists. I got lots of playlists. And help my channel to grow. And I love the comments, so feel free to send the comments. I always respond, or at least I always try to respond as best I can. Thanks so much again. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time on the Alan Rosenberg Show.